Hello and welcome back to the S.U.R.E Parenting podcast and YouTube channel. I am Sammy Bell and I am here to answer another question. So this post is actually one that was submitted in the free Facebook group, Empowering Parents to Uplift Kids, but Facebook refuses to post it. I don't know why. It just keeps sending error messages, won't post it. It's been a couple days. We've tried it from all the different platforms from, mobile and desktop, and it just won't. So thanks, Facebook, because now we have another podcast episode. So this mom actually had reached out to me in private message saying, I can't find your group. Can you help me? And before I could even respond, she found it, said she had posted. So I was able to read it and type back to her. So I'm actually going to read you the response that I sent to her when I could not post her post originally. I don't usually do this because in order to protect my family's time and my clients' time, I don't do coaching over Messenger. But for me, this was a really straightforward answer. So I went ahead and broke my own rule this one time. First of all, the post. So it says, I just had a neighbor down the street come to my house to let me know that my almost 9-year-old, whenever we say an almost blank-year-old, it's still the previous age. We don't hit, very rarely do we hit the brain development milestones in the previous year. Usually it's like a couple months into the year that they're going to develop. So we're going to say an 8-year-old. My 8-year-old son and a couple friends were throwing rocks at their well pump house. The outside light was broken and there are probably 30 holes on the outside with them throwing rocks. I spoke with my son about it very calmly and he said that he did break the light and made a few holes in the pump house, but he also did it with friends. How do I handle this? Do I punish him by not letting him go to the couple of friends' birthday parties? Sounds like that's probably something that's happening this weekend. Do I take his electronics away? What are the options? I have never had to deal with this with my other two sons, so I'm at a loss. My son seems remorseful, but I need to help him make better choices and not throw rocks and damage other people's property. We are going to go over there and replace everything he broke, and my son will be coming with us to help where he can and also to apologize, but what other action steps can be taken? So this is such a great question because it really highlights some of the big worries and fears that a lot of people have when they're talking about moving into like a gentle, conscious, respectful parenting place. The interesting thing is the question provides the answer. How do I help him to make it better? Right? How do I fix this? Then she says, we're going to go over there and we're going to physically fix the damage and apologize. So old school thinking is if we are mean enough to somebody, if we create enough suffering in them, they won't make any mistakes in the future. That's never worked, ever. Okay. You might be able to create enough fear about that one specific thing, but it is going to still leave them lacking the skills that they lacked originally that led to that decision making. It's not really teaching them how to do better, right? So I'll read you my response, probably a little repetitive because I just said that. And I'm sure I said something like that to her. So Facebook isn't letting me post your post. We already discussed that. But I want you to think this way. If you made a mistake, say you grabbed somebody's luggage at a retreat, and I happen to know that this is one of the many moms that I've gone to retreats with, so this is a relevant, reference. Say you grabbed somebody's luggage at a retreat and broke something or lost it. Would you be punished? No. You'd replace it or you'd fix it. The end. That's how you teach accountability with repair. Putting punishment on top of that takes away the real life consequence of making it better. It makes you, the parent, the enemy, instead of the choices that they made as the autonomous person who made a mistake. So instead of focusing on what they did, now they're looking at you. You're mean. It's not fair. You took away my friend's birthday party. You took away my electronics. right? Now they're shifting focus onto you instead of where ideally it would be, which is, oh man, I did that. Why did I do that? What was going on in that moment that I could use as a clue going forward, right? And this is the same thing that I do with y'all when I'm coaching. You have a terrible night, you blow up, you scream, you know, throw their toys in the trash, whatever the thing is that you're just like, that wasn't great. I'm not going to punish you. I'm not going to scream at you. I'm not going to shame you or berate you. I'm going to go, okay, this is feedback. Let's look at the situation and figure out what was happening that got you to the point that this was the best option you had. And what warning signs were going on in your brain and in your body that let you know that this might be coming, so that you can identify those before you end up in this type of situation again, so that you can plan in pattern interrupts for the next time that you start to feel this way, right? Let me finish my answer and I'm going to come back around to that. So I said, it makes him focus on himself and how unfair his life is instead of looking to what he can do now and later to learn and do better. Punishment never helps our kids be better people. At the very best, it makes them avoid doing something if they think they'll get caught. And at worst, well, the list is endless. And I say that because depending on what you mean by punishment, you can cause damage to the gray matter in their brain, i.e. spanking. You can cause emotional abandonment wounds. You can cause, you know, them to learn bullying tactics that they then think are appropriate in their relationships. You can just break trust. You can, you know, like I said in the beginning, shift their focus from what is theirs to feeling bad for themselves instead. You know, so there's like obviously a very large scale of things, but it's not good. Okay. So I said, stick with helping him make it better, which is what she said she was going to do already. That was her idea, right? She's got it. She nailed it. It's real, it's vulnerable, it's tangible, and it's applicable for his whole life. Okay. If he accidentally backs into somebody's car when he's 16, this is the kid who's going to be like, ooh, I did that. I'm going to make it better. If he, you know, is supposed to go check on somebody's plants and doesn't, and the plants die, he's going to go, oh my gosh, I let my friend down. I feel that. I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to buy them some new plants. Whatever that is. I mean, there's endless examples that could translate into, but what it will not do is create somebody who doesn't really care how they impact people, right? Who's not so focused on themselves that they're just like, yeah, whatever, right? We're teaching them now that you're still safe. You are still loved and lovable. And as a human, you are going through the experiencing of having made a mistake. As a human, let me show you what you can do now. How do you make that better? And it's so important to keep their dignity intact because you want them to believe that they are a good person. You want them to believe that the bar that you see them at is compassionate and thoughtful and caring and helpful and kind and all of these things. And that this behavior or action is an anomaly. That's not who they are, because if it's who they are, then like, who cares? That's just who they are, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. That's just who I am. But if it's not who they are, then it stands out as like a sore thumb. They're like, oh, you know, that's not quite right. I can feel that. I can sense that this isn't in alignment. So recognizing that, how do I get back into alignment, repair with who I need to repair with, take accountability for whatever I need to take accountability for, and move forward in alignment with who I truly am, which is this good person that my parents see me as. Plus, he'll come to you with problems later in life, knowing that you'll help him face those too. When I was a teenager, I cannot tell you how many problems that I helped friends solve that there definitely should have been an adult involved in. Okay? I've always, from the time I was about 9 I mean, maybe even earlier, but I very clearly remember being 9 years old and having a 24-year-old adult coming to me for advice. I have always been the type of person that just sort of elicits vulnerability and people tell me their problems. As far as I can consciously remember, I've always tried to be somebody who didn't act like I have all the answers, right? It's more, this is what the research shows, right? In my professional life now. Before that, it was, these are some things I've heard. Maybe you could try something like this. I know somebody who said that this was an idea that helped them, right? It's more of an offering, and then people get to choose what resonates for them. And I think because of that, that wasn't typical advice that a lot of people gave at that time. A lot of people would give the advice of, you should just do this, and then be mad if you didn't do that. And so because that was a little bit different, I had teachers ask me for advice in 8th grade, 10th grade, 9th grade. I'm just remembering different ones. I had coworkers that were significantly older than me ask for advice. It was just a thing. It's always been a thing. And so I ended up in several situations where at the time I didn't feel particularly intimidated because it was normal to me. But looking back, what was this adult thinking? Going to a 14-year-old and asking advice. Why? Like what is happening? My point though is that I did not go to my parents with those questions. I did not trust A, that they saw me positively, B, that they would stay calm and regulated and help solve the problem, C, that I wouldn't somehow end up in trouble. None of that. So I just dealt with it myself. Dangerous things, illegal things sometimes. Not too many, but a couple where I'm like, oh my, I got lucky, you know? So on a personal level, it is deeply important to me that my children feel safe coming to me above all else. And they do. They'll come to me. My son did this today. We are looking for a missing thing. Nobody knows where it is. I'm pretty sure one of my sons took it, but he says he didn't. And it's really important to me that my children feel like I believe them. So I say, okay. Turns out it was my other son. I never would have thought, I didn't even know he was in the room at the time this thing went missing. And he comes to me after we move on. We can't find it. I'm like, you know what? We'll clean up later. We'll see if we find it then. We've all kind of moved on. It took him some time to build up his courage to come to me and say, I'm not sure why, but I was the one that took that. I was like, oh, thank you for telling me. Right? He didn't have to. He didn't get caught. I never would have known. But one, he has his own integrity to live up to. And two, he knows he's safe. So I don't even think I had to ask him. I think he told me that he had already given it back and he thought that was a kind of weird thing to do and he probably wouldn't do that again. I'm like, well, thank you. I'm glad. I have no parenting to do here. Apparently I've already done it, you know? And this is a minor thing. It's a toy, but it starts with minor things. The pattern of coming to your parents instead of thinking that you have to do it all by yourself and keeping things from your parents starts with minor things, gets tested with seemingly major-ish things, right? And it builds the pattern in our children that that's what they do when they feel like something's not quite right. So her response was, thank you. That made me tear up because all I want is for my kids to be able to come to me with anything. I want to make sure I'm understanding this right. No consequence, but have him help fix the shed that he threw rocks at. So this was super interesting, right? Because you'll notice that the mom is using the word consequence instead of punishment, but she means punishment. So I said, that is a consequence. A consequence is what happens next, right? We spilled some water. There is water on the floor. The consequence of spilling the water is the floor is wet. That is the actual consequence. Now, the maybe logical next step as humans who live here is we dry it We clean it up. But anything that we have to come up with in our own heads to try to elicit suffering in our children, to try to create some sort of pain, even minor pain, physically, mentally, psychologically, that is going to be a punishment. And you do not need punishments to teach children. You actually rob them of the teaching part, right? They learn, oh, my parent's a jerk. My parent wants to hurt me. My parent doesn't understand me. My parent feels the need to get revenge on me. That's the kind of stuff that they're actually learning, the unintended consequence of punishing your kids. What happens next? They have these thoughts. Now, I'm sure that some of you have thought to yourself, oh, well, I deserve that. No one deserves to be hurt by the people they love, though. No one. So even the thought that you deserve it is a form of inner critic shame that was born from your parents choosing to punish you. And I don't blame our parents for not knowing what no one really knew at the time. Like, I get it that was culturally just what happened, but it does not mean we have to do the same thing. That doesn't mean they were right. It means that we can understand the circumstances that led to their decisions. It means that given the circumstance, and a lot of you have stories of, this punishment was totally reasonable. And I'm glad, right? It might have felt really logical or seemed really reasonable. And that's good. I'm glad that was your experience. That does not make it necessary to punish children, ever. Doesn't mean we won't do it, right? Especially when you are looking at the difference between a consequence of just what happens versus an imposed consequence or a punishment that you made happen. You know what I mean? Pretty much all parents are going to do that at some point, but you don't have to. And if you find yourself having, she doesn't say this, but I could imagine, as Facebook's not posting and as I'm not responding for a couple hours, just being like, you know what? You're not going to those birthday parties this weekend. This was a terrible choice and you need to learn to make better choices. I could see that coming out of most parents' mouths, right? Fair enough. If you're watching this, listening to this, and you're going, okay, but what do I do now? I'll answer that. You go to your kid and you say, I need to talk to you. And they might not want to talk to you because they're probably mad and sad and hurt and feeling a lot of shame and guilt and just a whole mess of feelings, right? You were really honest with me. You came to me with a problem and I felt a lot of anger and fear. And I took away your birthday parties this weekend thinking that would make a positive difference. And as I've sat and thought about it, I think it would actually make a negative difference. See what they say. Tell them, I have chosen a different path. When I make mistakes, I have to make them better. When I do something illegal like speed, I might have to pay a ticket. When I break something of somebody else's, I might have to buy them a new one, right? So I think that it would make a lot more sense if I'm trying to teach you how to be a responsible adult to help you solve this like an adult. What do you think? Just talk to them. You're a human too. You're allowed to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to have a conversation about what you're going to do differently. You get to do that. That doesn't ruin your authority. That teaches them that you are actually thoughtful and considerate when you do make decisions. It means you're accountable. Like, that's top-notch leadership right there. Right? Imagine a boss that could come to you and be like, hey, I lashed out at you and I shouldn't have done that. I want to do a do-over. I would rather address this problem in this way, not from my own fear and anger. Mad respect, man. You know what I mean? Say it's already happened. Don't just ignore it. Let them know. I know I didn't let you go to that birthday party because I was angry with you and I wanted you to like learn a lesson or something, and that's how I was taught to teach people lessons. But I think that I might have taught you the wrong lesson. I think that I taught you that if you break somebody's stuff and then don't go to somebody difference party, somehow that like makes it better. And it really doesn't. It makes you mad at me, and it doesn't fix what was broken. So that was my, knee-jerk reaction, and I'm sorry that you missed the party because of my reactivity. I do want to help you actually make this better, right? I want to help you to look at the situation and figure out what would repair with these people, these neighbors. Just shift into that collaborative approach. Shift into, let's solve this problem together. I'm going to lock arms with you. I know you can, I know this sucks. There's probably going to be some suck in it. There's going to be a lot of feelings in it, but I know you can handle it. I know you're going to get through this. It might be embarrassing. You might feel a lot of shame come up. That's okay. We're human. We do stuff sometimes that leaves some icky feelings in our body and in our mouth. Icky taste in our mouth, right? It's part of being human. So I'm going to walk with you while you experience this, and we're going to make it better together. When your child has a problem, you have two options. You can help them solve the problem, or you can punish them for having a problem, right? So the idea of punishment is to create some sort of suffering in this person. So do we want to make our children suffer for having problems, or do we want to raise problem solvers? If we want to raise problem solvers, then we need to focus on solutions, not retribution. And she says it much more eloquently, but I can't coin it right in my brain, and I don't have it in front of me. L.R. Nost says that discipline is helping a child solve a problem, while punishment is making a child suffer for having a problem. To raise problem solvers, focus on solutions, not retribution. So going back to, what brought him to this place. One, he is 8 years old. Okay. 8-year-olds still have impulse control issues. Your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you're 26 years old as a male. All right. So he's got 18 years left. Yeah, math. I'm great at it. Let me tell you what. That's a long time. Okay. I'm not shocked that an 8-year-old made an impulsive decision, especially when you are looking at group activity or mob mentality. Why? Because they start to really want to belong with their friends. And the stages of attachment are proximity, who do you spend time with? Sameness, what's the same about us? Belonging and loyalty. And what better way to establish belonging and loyalty with peers than to do something a little bit bad and not tell anybody, right? To keep secrets for each other. It's a huge way that kids establish belonging and loyalty, which means there's an opportunity for discussion there. Really good quality friends are not going to ask you to keep dangerous secrets or harmful secrets. In fact, nobody that's good for you is going to ask you to keep secrets like that. And that's a tough one. It's a tough one for people to learn. It's a tough one for kids to learn. It's a tough one for adults to learn. That it is a way to kind of force bonding. We're in this together sort of thing, but it's very manipulative. And I encourage you to notice if somebody is expecting you to keep a secret that is harmful to anyone. It's probably not going to be a very fulfilling friendship. We can start talking about qualities that we look for in friends. Perhaps one of these friends is older. I've seen that a lot. Perhaps one of these friends gets excitement from being the leader and kind of making the younger kids do something that he knows isn't really a nice thing to do. That might be something to talk about. Practicing, like actually practicing. How do you say no? It sounds like this kid might have 2 older siblings. How do they say no to those older siblings? How do they say no to mom and dad? I know, everybody hates that word, but you know what? If our kids can't practice with us, They're not going to do it with their peers when their peers are like, come on, let's throw rocks at the shed, right? There's also just immaturity, like lack of knowledge. I would not think that throwing some pebbles at a shed would actually make holes in it. How old is this shed? How old is this wood? Why did it not just make a noise and bounce off? I have questions. Light bulbs, fair. But like wood planks? I am shocked that an 8-year-old was strong enough to throw a rock hard enough to go through a wood plank. That's odd. And it kind of makes me suspect that there might have already been holes in the shed, especially I think they said 30 holes. And the kids were aiming at the holes, not that they were aiming to create the holes, right? So in that case, then it becomes a creative problem solving. All right, you guys want to throw, that's awesome. Let's set up targets, right? You guys can do this kind of play in this kind of game, and you can be the one to say, hey, let's take it to my house. I'm sure my mom will help us find a way that we can, aim at whatever. I have fruit trees in my backyard, and I had some kids over and they were aiming at the pears and the apples and the peaches with their little Nerf guns because some of the kids really did not want to be aimed at. And we want to respect everybody's boundaries, but some other kids really wanted to play with the Nerf guns. So we set up an alternate target so everybody could play and feel safe, right? These are solvable problems, and we want them to look at situations like this as a solvable problem. We have to be willing to keep our regulation and see the absolute best in them in order to be able to help them to solve those problems and to continue to build their own problem-solving skills. So, kid did something shocking. Mom showed up in a really calm, loving way, is helping them literally repair any damage done, which is amazing. And going forward, this child will trust mom with things that maybe go wrong and has the opportunity to build their skill set of saying no to peers and coming up with creative solutions so that they can still do the impulsive, fun things they want to do, just pivoting it a little bit to some way that doesn't cause any permanent damage for anybody else. Sounds like a win to me. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a question like this, you are welcome to join our free Facebook group. You are welcome to submit your podcast episode ideas in the link below. There's a Google Forms doc thing, whatever those are. You are also welcome to email me, sammy@sureparenting.com. And if you just need support, like this parenting thing is actually that hard, especially when you are breaking tons and tons of generational curses along the way. So if you need support, know that you deserve it. You are welcome to do that for free through YouTube, podcast group, whatever. If you want more one-on-one individualized attention, you can do one-on-one coaching with me. You can do group coaching with me. Both of those are available at www.sureparenting.com. And you can set up a free call to discuss it all at bit.ly/call Sammy. I look forward to talking to you later. Bye.